Good morning. We are back with Naaman's Nook, April 20th through April 24th. We're almost to the end. We have one more week after this week. Fantastic job on your triremas and your scenes. They were fantastic. I love seeing those and I appreciated all the detail that you put into those. Also, I want to thank you for those of you that have completed the assignments and continue to do your best. We appreciate that. Um, I'm sure most or all of you hopefully have heard about our dear friend Tom Dorton, the bus driver. He drove bus 6. He passed away last week. If you want to write his family a letter and if you want to share your sympathies and maybe a memory or just the appreciation of everything he had done for our school, you can go to Google Classroom, and I have put letters to Tom's family in each classroom, so you can go and um, write him a note. Use simple graphics if you want to, and that way I will then print them off and send them to his family. That's not an assignment, that's not anything that you have to do, but if you knew Tom and he had done um, something or been someone special for you, and you feel led to do that, then that is there for you to do. His bus is also in front of the high school um, as a memorial to him. There are flowers and wreaths and notes, letters, and things that people, students, families have left there as a memorial. If you would like to make something and take there, that option is there also. Again, um, totally what you feel led to do, no obligation. But we wanted to give you a chance to memorialize and to remember him. So, we are talking about how you show honor and courage. My favorite movie, one of my favorite movies, is The Blind Side. And one of the quotes from that movie is, "If you die trying for something important, then you have both honor and courage, and that's pretty good." That is a quote from the movie that the player comes up with at the end to kind of show what he's learned in his life and how he plans to apply it in his future. So, what I want you to kind of think about and talk with your families, we have a lot of people helping us survive, helping us be the best we can be, showing courage, having honor, some both, some one or the other. So just kind of take a moment with your family, maybe tonight over dinner, and talk about how your household, how you specifically have shown honor or courage, and then also maybe you've done both at the same time. Your grades are posted in Harmony. If you have not completed the assignment, you will have a 0. I check IXL. If you've not logged in, you haven't done the assignment. Fridays is the test day. So each day up into that Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you need to practice in that area, doing at least 20. Um, Friday then is when you log in to do the 20. Last week we had that information on quizzes. I haven't decided yet exactly how we're going to do that this week. I need to go back and compare before I make a decision. So if you have a 0, go back, look at what you were supposed to do, look at what you actually did, and then I have a feeling that will answer questions. If you can't figure that out and are confused, then by all means, email me, send me a message on Schoology, and I will help you figure that out. Just for fun, I had a lot of interesting comments for the Would You Rather questions last or 2 weeks ago. So I put some on here again for dinner conversation, family talk. You can see if your answer would be the same as your family. The first one: constantly stumble when walking or constantly stutter when speaking. Which would you rather have? And that's for the extended time, that's just not for a little bit. So, which one would you rather have? The second one is: would you rather receive $50 right now or receive $100 a year from now? Double your money, or would you take the fast cash now? And the third, this is kind of interesting. You've been at home, so you can maybe see it, visualize it a little more. Have a large painting of yourself or have a large sculpture of yourself. See which one you would pick, and then on each of those, and then run it past your family members and see if they would agree. I like to hear and see what your reasoning is and how you justify what you answer. Assignments again this week are all due by 9 p.m. April 24th. That is Friday. We do have another week. Our last day of class will be May 1st. So we have this coming week, and then we have next week as well. Imagination. Poetry needs just that. We are going to look at poetry this week. We're going to apply a lot of the skills that we've already learned. And then we're going to look at some forms of poetry, but it always helps to have imagination and think of a different way to say what you're thinking and add some color and imagery in there. This week, we have types of poems. We're going to apply skills to poetry. Again, mood, tone, figurative language, all of those skills we've already learned. We're going to put that in the poetry genre. And then analyzing poems, reading it, and then seeing what it actually is saying and what it means. And then I mentioned this last week, the poetry slams. We are going to have you pick a poem, either one that you have written or one that you have read that you like, and you're going to slam it. And what that means is you're going to perform it. I have a couple clips that I will connect to Tuesday's um, Schoology right below this one, and you can see simply what that is and some examples. It is very similar to the Reader's Theater that we did when we took voice and tone and applied it to what we're reading and how we make um, it more meaningful. Also, like the reading walk that we did um, in most of the classes, I think we at least did it in um, once or twice in all of them, pausing at commas, stopping at periods, and then putting emphasis on different words. And we'll show you how to signal the reader to do that. We are going to be reading poetry in your online reading book. There are 3 different books that you need to look at. In the link for the online book is on Tuesday's Schoology. They are my book, Winter Bees and Other Poems of the Cold, then Love That Dog, and The Poem That Will Not End. Those are the 3. You don't have to read all 3 of them. You just need to pick one. There isn't going to be a specific reading assignment each day. I will have you reference different poems, different pages in those books to look at as a mentor text. So make sure you know your username and password for the online reading book. Remember that that is the same as your Spelling City username and password. So the first form that we're going to look at this week, and the one that we're going to mainly work with, is free verse poetry. Um, and it's not a rhyming poem. It's not anything that has a beat that you could clap to. Some poems look like a picture, and I'm going to show you an example of that. Some have shapes. Some have different fonts, different size fonts, different maybe italics, maybe bold or underline. And it doesn't take up as much space as the story. Has lots of white space. So you have maybe a couple of stanzas, you maybe have a couple of lines, getting the meaning down, and then you have different pictures, illustrations that also can put meaning to the poem. It can be written about anything. It can be short or long. If you are writing about something that means a lot to you, that you have a lot of knowledge about, you might have several stanzas, several lines within each stanza, or um, it could be short, concise. You can have repeating words. It's not a repetition like we saw last week, but you can have repeating words. And have sound words, onomatopoeia, alliteration, metaphor, simile. You can still apply those to free verse. There just is no requirement for those. Again, we have what is free verse poetry? It's one of the simplest yet most difficult types of poetry to write. Does not follow a set structure or rhyme or meter. Creates a beautiful meaning piece without guidelines. So when I've asked you to write a story, um, I've given you maybe a topic, or you let you come up with your topic when you have the choice, and you're just writing your thoughts and feelings. That is what a free verse poem is. Instead of paragraphs, remember we have stanzas. Instead of sentences, we have lines. Tips for writing a free verse poem: you use short words with sharp consonants, so that way it sounds interesting to read. Use sound devices such as alliteration and onomatopoeia. We could apply any of our figurative language that we've used throughout the year, as well as personification, and vary your stanzas and lines. Again, it doesn't have to be a set pattern, it could be left up to your um, creative devices. And again, it's that imagination SpongeBob showed us earlier, imagination with the topic. Some examples of a free verse poem: the one on the left, you see that would be considered one stanza. There are not rhyming words. A line is one word, um, but when you read that, you definitely get how the mood, what the author wants the reader. Remember, we have the mood of how the reader is feeling, and the tone. Remember, our T and author has a T. The tone of how the author, Amy Ludwig Vandewater, what mood she wants the reader to have, and then what tone she wrote it in. The one on the right, we were talking about shapes. I'm going to try to share a link with you that you can put your poems into shapes. We'll see how that works. Hopefully, that will be as easy as I'm hoping, planning it to be. So, here we're talking about um, planes soar. When we talk about high, they go up, and then it's touch the sky. They put it up here near the top. So again, it's acting out or showing in forms and pictures what the poem is saying. So how to write a free verse poem? One of the tools that I suggest you use, totally up to you, and we're going to look at some others throughout the week, a word bank or a list of words about the topic. So in red, you see that I've given you an example of a topic, which is the quarantine. Obviously, we all can have our ideas. So that is the topic I'm showing or choosing to show. And then poetry shows emotion, feelings about a topic. So, how do you feel? Just kind of think about your time at home. There have been times when I've been sad, frustrated, happy, hopeful. Those describe words that I feel about the quarantine. List two or three colors. So when I have pictured the quarantine, um, colors or symbols, some days have been blue, some days have been gray, and a symbol that I would think that would represent the quarantine would be a face mask. What movies or people does your topic remind you of? The movie that we've kind of joked about with Mrs. Love and myself is the movie Groundhog's Day, when everything he goes to bed and wakes up the next day and does the same thing, has the same day over and over again. So I that's a self text to self um, connection between the movie and what we're experiencing. And it reminds you of um, my boys, and then my husband also, as well as, and I could have typed on here too, the first responders and all of those still going on. And then tone, again, how the author feels. So when I'm writing, I'm the author, and the tone is what I'm feeling as I write it. So again, angry, sad, irritated, supportive. Those are all tones from you, the author. So I put all of those together, and what I would do is have that word bank set aside as I'm going through. So my title here, quarantine 2020, living in fear but having hope, angrily living Groundhog's Day, supporting my husband as he goes to work, happy that my boys have e learning to help them achieve. So that is one stanza with one, two, three, four, 5 lines. Again, your stanzas, lines, totally up to you. You notice there is not a rhyming A, B, B, A, any kind of pattern at the end. And that is all, and that's fine. That is what free verse is. Okay. So if we go down to next week, Mrs. Thacker will be also in a video on Tuesdays. I'm going to record that with her Monday evening and then post it um, for you to see. She will present some of her favorite poems in the video. We'll introduce you to poets that if you want to spend more time or look more into, there are YouTube videos. And we'll give you some examples of how to write different forms of poetry. And then she'll explain to you how to slam a poem. For our IXL skills, we are M3 is a repeat of last week, analyzing poems, reading it, looking at different stanzas, seeing what figurative language they've used to get that meaning across. E2 is identify sensory details. Sensory details are what you see, hear, taste, smell, your 5 senses that you have. So um, how are they portrayed in a poem um, using your senses? And then F5, we've done a lot previously with mood and tone. Again, mood, me, the reader, tone, T, the author. Questions or concerns, make sure that you do all of your assignments for each class. If you have questions, reach out and ask your teacher. Mrs. Love and Mr. Schaefer and I spend a lot of time going back and forth, seeing who has done what for which teacher, um, doing one thing for them and not the other two, or vice versa. That would be like going home every day and not staying for your second and third hour. We want to make sure that we have you where we need you for 6th grade. That means learning and reviewing the skills that we're required to teach you in 5th grade. The second one, we can see if you've done your work. It doesn't count if you simply type done. I go back on IXL. You can go back on IXL, and I'm going to refresh your memory a little bit to see how much you've done. If you haven't logged on at all and typed done, um, doesn't count. Same as if you haven't logged into your reading book but claim that you've done your work, doesn't count. The last reminder Mr. Schaefer put on his classroom page, and I shared it to mine, and I think Mrs. Love did as well. Just like at school, we can see your screen and what you're looking at and what you're doing. We can lock your screen, as some of you are well aware. Your Chromebook is a tool, not as a toy. So just like you wouldn't sit down with your um, science book and play cards or play video games, you would not do um, play games and do things with your Chromebook either. So make sure, reach out to Mrs. Love, Mr. Schaefer, and myself if you've got questions. Make sure that you do your work and check things out. We do have one more week after this week um, to wind up the year, and we will see you next week with another PowerPoint.